and sat me down for my review, and they were basically like, everything is great. Here are all the things we like. Our only question about you is we can't tell if you actually want this. So we'll talk a year from now. And a year later, I was like, I do not. And I just walked away, which is crazy, scary, but was necessary. I had hit a point where I realized I was unhappy every single day of my life. And maybe not all day, maybe just for half an hour, but there wasn't a day. Sometimes it was all day, but there wasn't a single day where I was not unhappy. And so I was just going for neutral. It took me a long time before I even decided to quit that I wasn't a quitter. I am giving up on this and whatever. But eventually I just felt it was necessary, and we can talk about that. But it took a little bit. I went on a couple trips. I just relaxed. I became human again. But it really did take about 6 months. I think I was on a trip about 6 months in Australia. And I remember sitting on a bus somewhere and just suddenly smiling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm happy. I forgot what this feels like.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Will Podcast. I am so excited today to have Stephanie Wilkins with me. Stephanie is the Director of Content at Legal Tech Hub, where she helps lead the company in building its editorial content and leadership. Previously, she was the Editor-in-Chief of Legal Tech and at News ALM, where she served as a guide for the entire ALM newsroom. That's pretty impressive, Stephanie. She talks about the intersection of law, technology, and AI. And in the past, Stephanie was a successful litigator in New York City. Here we are at the offices of Clyde & Co. and Dewey & LaBeouf. Her time in big law, for better or worse, gave her a deep understanding of how legal tech can and should be used in real life to help make a valuable difference, both for firms and the people who work there. So, Stephanie, big welcome to the Will Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I know it's always weird to hear my story read back because it's been not a linear path, but it's a fun one.
I've had many guest speakers come into my community and share their stories, and that's always one of the big takeaways, right? Is no one's path is linear. When we hear a bio like that, an impressive bio, it sounds like it was just one thing to the other, but it's not a straight line. So why don't you take us back to your days in big law, or even if you want to take us back to becoming a lawyer and what that was like for you?
That part of my story is very common. I was always a smart student, went into college. I was a liberal arts student, kept adding majors, didn't really know what I wanted to do. At that time, we weren't really doing gap years or anything. And I didn't really come from parents where finding myself was one of my options. So, I applied to law school. A lot of well-performing liberal arts students did that. And I did well on the LSAT. I got into law school. So I was like, sure, let's go. I ended up going to NYU, which I loved the experience. It was wonderful. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And then I went straight from there to big law. To totally date myself, that was in the early aughts. And we were interviewing for summer associate jobs almost the second we walked in the door. And they were just very clueless for how much I had really studied. I was very intelligent, but I had no idea what I was doing. And all these jobs, and I took one. I did the path because I also had signed big years of debt. And so I started as a summer associate, and then after the bar, started as first-year associate, and I just thought, this is great, this is what I went to school for. And I had somewhere along the line between signing the loan papers and doing these interviews, I had forgotten that I really went to law school because I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. Not surprisingly, it's a very classic story of burnout, but I stuck it out longer than a lot of people did. I was an associate. It started as LaBeouf, Lamb, Green & McRae. It merged infamously to the Dewey & LaBeouf, which no longer exists, but I was only at the merged firm for about 6 months. And then I followed a partner to the New York office of Clyde & Co., which at the time was very small. And I was there for another 2.5 years. So about 8 years total. And then I got to the point where partnership was going to be on the table. And then they sat me down for my review, and they were basically like, everything is great. Here are all the things we like. Our only question about you is we can't tell if you actually want this. So we'll talk a year from now. And a year later, I was like, I do not. And I just walked away, which is crazy, scary, but was necessary.
Wow. And oh my God, I have chills. So did you walk away without a plan, without knowing what was next? Say a little bit more about that.
No, I didn't. I did not really know what was next. Calling it a plan would be generous. I had paid off all my law school debt. I stuck in long enough. So I had that extent of a plan existed. But I just was like, I took a little bit of a beat. I did some traveling. I just sort of cleared my head. I thought I was going to do nothing to do with law whatsoever. That was the only thing I thought I did know. But I loved writing and photography. I was going to be a freelancer. And I just had this rationale of, I was actually a very good lawyer. I was a very good associate, but I hated it. How good could I be at something I actually liked doing? So I was like, I will figure this out.
Yes.
We'll work at 3 different Starbucks if I have to. I'm not showing the back up at my parents' house with a suitcase or any of that. No judgment on people that do that. That wasn't an option for me. I was like, I'm just going to figure out a way to do this. I was so unhappy that I was like, this got to be better.
That's something that a lot of people, when they come to me and to Will, are like, if I can be this good at this, what if I did something I actually really like? Heaven forbid, or heaven, is it even possible, actually loved? And it takes people a while to be able to walk away from that quote unquote sure thing, the safe bet, the prestigious identity of being a lawyer. And so what was that like for you transitioning to this exploration period?
I don't even think I knew initially. It took probably a good 6 months for it to sink in. I was just physically and mentally exhausted and just needed a break. I just had to navigate a lot of friends, family, whatever. All my lawyer friends got it, right? I had made it, right? I was the one that had stuck it out to the end with partnership on the table, and isn't that what I was supposed to be going for? So it took me a long time before I even decided to quit, that I wasn't a quitter. I am giving up on this and whatever. But eventually I just felt it was necessary, and we can talk about that. But it took a little bit. I went on a couple trips. I just relaxed. I became human again. But it really did take about 6 months. I think I was on a trip about 6 months in Australia. And I remember sitting on a bus somewhere and just suddenly smiling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm happy. I forgot what this feels like. You said do something you love. I wasn't even considering that. I was just going for not unhappy. I was like, I had hit a point where I realized I was unhappy every single day of my life. And maybe not all day, maybe just for half an hour, but there wasn't a day. Sometimes it was all day, but there wasn't a single day where I was not unhappy. And so I was just going for neutral.
Oh, God, that's such a big driver for me and Will, is like, why do we think that's okay? And it's so common of just work is work isn't fun, you just have to pay the bills, you can't expect life to be a party. I'm a dreamer, I'm an idealist, I'm an optimist. I didn't go to law school, and I think that was part of what allows me to continue to think the way that I think.
The artistic side of me was never really encouraged growing up. I was like, you get a job, you make money, that's what you do. But then also after going through law school and going through all of the years of being an associate, there really was, from some people, and a lot of people in the firm in particular, this sense of, oh, you're a quitter if you walk away. You can't handle it. You can't do it.
Yes.
It took a long time for me to come to terms with that before I even quit, that I was like, I could do this. I could do this for the next 20 years of my life. I don't want to. It's not worth it. It took a long time to get to that point.
That's a lot of the soul searching, and hopefully I help people shortcut that when we work together, that they see other women. That's part of the reason for this podcast, that they see people like you who like say that and then found their way and into something happier. So you were on the bus in Australia, you started smiling, you're like, okay, I don't have to write a brief or respond to a client or whatever you had been doing.
I didn't have a BlackBerry with me that was buzzing every 5 seconds.
Tell us a little bit about how you started finding your way into this more creative work, into being a journalist, an editor, and all the things you're doing now.
Yeah, I had always loved writing in everything from high school, undergrad, then when it wasn't legal writing, then it became legal. Writing was a through thread always of everything I loved. And I always had loved photography too. Like I made a point while I was in Big Law of taking a photography class. I remember it distinctly. It was Monday nights from 8:30 to 10:30 for 9 straight weeks. And I made every one. I went back to the office sometimes afterwards, but I still went. So while I was traveling and doing this stuff, I was taking pictures and writing a personal travel blog, and it was just outlet that way. And it made me realize that I really did love it. Much like everyone, I wanted to be like a National Geographic photographer, but there's 10 of those in the world, right? But so it got me back into, I can sit at a computer and write again and actually enjoy it and like it. And then I knew I was giving myself roughly a year to do these various trips back and forth. And then after that, I was going to figure something out. So it was always in the back of my mind that this is a limited time to get yourself reset. I have rent to pay. Unfortunately, I've not won the lottery. I'm not independently wealthy. Yeah, so it just got me in that. And as I just had that free time without my brain cluttered with everything, I had a million ideas. Maybe I could do this. I would apply for the most random little jobs that I never heard from, but I just started scouring, like, what do even people get paid to write about? What do they do? So when I came back, I did start doing more. I got little writing gigs if they were like maybe travel related or something. And I wasn't going to do legal writing, but soon enough, I had enough connections in the legal world that were like, hey, you're a freelance writer now. Do you want to write this legal thing? At that point, I was a broke freelancer. I needed to pay rent, and lawyers have a lot more money to pay you to write things than these little travel jobs. So I started taking them on. I'm glad I took that year because it made me realize that, like, I don't hate the law at all. I just hated practicing big law in New York. And then I had friends in the writing space that were like lawyers that moved on. I have a lot of friends that moved from lawyer to writer, actually, but many of us at some point ended up through Above the Law, and we were there, which is a lot of people might have read that. I started doing just little columns for them under a pseudonym, and then they came to me and said, so there's this legal tech writing that we get. It's sponsored content. It pays a lot more, and we don't have time to do it. We need someone to do it. And I was like, you had me at it pays a lot more. And I just fell into it, and I really liked it. I never realized I was tech savvy. Really, as I grew up with computers, I just thought that's what everyone did. And so it never really occurred to me that people weren't tech savvy, and particularly then the legal profession wasn't very tech savvy. And so I just fell into that niche, and I just was then freelancing in it for a decade before I took the law.com job, which was also another long shot. And I will forever thank the person that took a chance on me. But yeah.
That's amazing. So some of the themes I'm hearing in that are that you tuned into what you've always loved, that through line of writing. And even if you weren't encouraged as a young person because you had to pay the bills, it was something you really was always there and you returned to. That's one of the things that I help people do is what are those through lines for them? What are those themes? And how can you get paid for doing that? You worked your network too. When you got back, you know a lot of lawyers. You told them you were available for writing jobs, and you had been writing also on your own, like doing your own travel blog without probably intending to, but you were building somewhat of a portfolio.
And it's really interesting to me. I'm curious how things would have played out, say, 20 years later, because there really was no gig economy for lawyers back when I left big law. You were either a practicing lawyer or you weren't. There were some contract attorney jobs, but there wasn't such a thing as a legal writer or a freelance lawyer or whatever. And maybe if there was, I might have done something a little different. But yeah, I had to forge that path, and I'm glad those opportunities exist now. And that's why I love what you're doing, because I used to joke at the time. So many people, not just lawyers, afterwards would be like, how did you have the courage to quit your job? I was crazy. And I used to joke that I should be a career quitting counselor, and I don't think they existed then, and now they exist.
I know they exist. I just recently had Goalie Cole Cochran on the podcast, who founded Lessons from a Quitter, taking that derogatory term of, oh, you can't hack it, you're a quitter, and flipping it into, actually, there's a lot we can learn from people who quit things that they don't like doing. And this is our one wild and precious life, and you don't have to stay doing something, and there's value in quitting. So yeah, it's really a different thing now. So let's talk a little bit about, because we met at a legal tech meetup here in New York, and I've been going to them for years also. I've always just thought legal tech is a great place for people who are leaving big law, leaving the practice, to use their experience, their education, their skills, their natural talents. How would you describe legal tech and the landscape right now?
The landscape is exploding, especially since the advent of generative AI. There's so much going on. So that there are jobs today that didn't exist 3 years ago, and there will be jobs 3 years from now that don't exist today. But so many people in legal tech have a story that almost nobody over the age of 30 has a linear path to legal tech, because it wasn't a thing, and so many lawyers have pivoted into it. It's interesting. I actually know more ex-lawyers in legal tech who actually liked being lawyers than in other situations, which is interesting. There is so much opportunity if you are at all tech savvy or you're tech interested. It's everywhere now. Everyone needs to be fluent in it, whether or not they want to be. And if you're on the front end of that curve, and it doesn't even have to be practicing law in the legal tech space, which some people do. There is that too. Those people are carving out those niches. It's a really eclectic group of people. Some people were pure tech people that found themselves into legal tech. And then there were legal people that, like me, just figured out they were tech savvy and ended up there. But it's really a welcoming place. People are I love hearing people's backstories because they're all so different. And I remember I was speaking at Everlaw. I had a summit back in the fall, and there was a women's lunch, and they had me do some opening remarks. One of the prompts I gave people to talk at each table was, how did you get into legal tech? And at least at our table, every single person, their story was basically how they accidentally wound up there and fell in love. If you think there's one clear path that you don't have, don't think that. It's like there are so many ways in if it's something you think you're interested in.
1,000%. I've always found the community really welcoming also. And so what would you suggest for lawyers who are like, how can I learn more about legal tech? I don't even know where to begin. I know it's a thing. I know we're supposed to be using these platforms now at work or whatever. But where would you suggest people start?
Legal Tech Hub, insights, analysis platform. We're trying to demystify legal tech for the world, but there are a lot of other publications and places that are writing this information as well. So it's really just be curious and self-educate on it. For better or worse, legal tech loves LinkedIn. You're on there and you meet one person, connect with them. You'll connect with more people. It's a huge community on there. I never thought I would have a presence on LinkedIn and be checking it every day. But I do. It's just where it's happening. And you find out events in your area you can go to. And you find out, we met at a New York legal tech meetup. You can meet so many people in the place where you are. And people are very willing to introduce you to other people. So yeah, just really be curious, scour it out. And I've never met anyone that hates it when someone comes up and introduces themselves.
But you had the tenacity and just the courage and the internal drive to be like, okay, I'm stepping out. I'm just going to take some time off and step off that lockstep path. Especially for people if they went kindergarten through JD, right? I say K through JD and never had to interview other than on-campus interviews like you did, right? Into a summer associate and stayed at that firm and followed someone they worked with maybe or made a lateral move. There's often a mindset I encounter in the people I work with of, oh, I don't want to bother them.
But it's funny, like you say tenacity and courage and you use those kind of words, which in hindsight, I do apply to myself. But at the time, it didn't feel like that. It felt like crazy desperation and get me out of here. And I'm just floundering and don't know what I'm doing. So in the moment, you don't feel like I am this brave. I'm making this brave decision and I'm going to conquer this. At the time, I just needed out and just trusted myself that I would figure it out in some way.
Beautiful. Stephanie, I want to go back to that year when they had that very frank conversation with you. They're like, okay, we love all these things about you, but we're not sure if you want this. And at the end of the year, you said you came back and you were like, I don't want this. So I'm just curious, what was your rationale? What were the things you were looking at there that helped you make that decision?
I think, honestly, I probably knew the answer on the spot when they said it the first time. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't in a mental place yet to be done. I wanted to get my life in order. I wanted to really make sure because I didn't want to hate it. I always really wanted to like it. I was disappointed that it didn't work out, not through anyone's fault in general. I'm not blaming the firm. I'm not blaming myself. But so I knew in the moment that a year from now what my answer would be, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to really look at this. I'm going to keep doing my job in this year and actively try to do things differently or focus on work-life balance or focus on the things that I really hated to see if it could get better. And just nothing changed. I liked the people I work with. It wasn't that. I liked the clients. It wasn't that. It was just the whole nature of the machine. And so I think it was just more for me getting comfortable with the fact that I knew that was my answer and getting my life in order.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, I think there's often a real grief for people who leave big firms and leave the practice when that had been their dream or their path or just the thing they thought was going to be their thing.
And it was a lot to not second guess. Could I have done something to make that better? I am disappointed right now. Could I have done something different? And sure, everyone could always do something different, but I always very quickly became comfortable with the fact that hindsight's 20/20, right? But knowing what I knew at the time, I know exactly why I made every decision that I made. It was the right decision for me at the time. And it just didn't work out. And I got over the disappointment, but I was disappointed.
I just want to normalize that, not just for you, but for anyone who's been down that path. And there's one of the women I worked with who she became actually a coach and now she's coaching on my team. And we really spoke about her grief around leaving. She's an immigrant and her family all thought just she had it totally made and why would she give that up? And she had to really go through her own grieving process around leaving something that she thought was the epitome of sort of American success.
And I get that completely because I had plenty of external family forces that did not understand because I didn't have the traditional life path of where many people in my family, the women were like, get married, have kids. But somehow that was okay because I was the big city lawyer. I was that woman. So when I walked away from that, they just didn't have a box to put me in. They couldn't understand why I would walk away from this job with this salary that supposedly is supposed to be what you want. And having to justify it to other people doesn't help when you're trying to get your own head in the right place.
So good for you. Got on a plane, went to Australia, spent some time with yourself.
And just got to exist because I always loved to travel. That was another thing. But I remember being in a remote country and answering emails on my BlackBerry, even though I was supposed to be on vacation. And somebody could have easily found that file. They just didn't bother. It was easier to call me.
I worked with a woman who she went on her honeymoon to Peru when really before cell phones were pretty ubiquitous, but she's, I really will be out of range there. I will be at Machu Picchu. They will not be able to get me.
Back in the early days, again, to date myself, of BlackBerries, because the firm would give us a BlackBerry, it wasn't global service. Now I know there are some weak spots, but pretty much you can be expected to get service most places, and there's Wi-Fi, right? But back then, and so I knew, I was a junior associate, but I knew a junior partner at the time who would keep the BlackBerry coverage map pinned up on their board, specifically to pick vacations where there was no service.
Exactly. Smart lawyer. So what might you say to a lawyer who's listening to this, who's feeling that disappointment, feeling that internal knowing that I don't really want this and I'm not sure what else to do?
I think it's hard. I think especially as women, it's really hard to admit that what you want might change. Maybe that was what you want and it's not what you want now, and that's okay. That doesn't make you a failure. I'm sure there is something you like to do. There might even be some aspect of your job that it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in it, but I loved writing, and it wasn't really till I was figuring out that I wanted to leave law that I had always loved the writing part through it, and I could pursue that just in a different setting. At the time, I was probably like, that's the part I hate the least because I was unhappy, but still I knew it was something. And so it's find the ways, and with online connections to people, it's so much easier to, the dreaded word networking, I hate it, but like it's so much easier to connect with people with similar interests or people that are doing things, even if you just follow that person that on LinkedIn that you think is doing a really cool thing, and that will then, like, you'll find other people that are maybe doing that thing that you didn't even know was a job.
I love that. And the way I teach networking, the way I think about it is it's having a conversation. It's being curious about someone, how they got there. And everyone likes to be approached and be like, hey, how did you get where you are, or what you're doing? So most people are flattered if you reach out and say, hey, do you have 10 minutes to talk to me? I'd love to hear. Yeah,
I think the word networking, at least for me, it had such a bad connotation because my experience of networking was being forced to go to this like cocktail party or this retreat, and it was forced conversation with people you had zero interest in. I associated network with just this awful experience. It's totally different when you're in an environment you want to be in and talking to people you're interested about and people who are actually interested about you.
Totally. And I think the thing with those kind of forced networking, the cocktail hour, the retreat, it's like nobody can be real. It's like everyone's wearing a mask, right? So if there was any genuine authenticity or ability for people to connect on a more human, not just a business level, then it might feel different. I do think it's one of the great things about the pandemic is there's some level of formality has downshifted because everyone is online, everyone's connected through. There is a way to really just connect with people as people. And I think the value of showing up authentically as ourselves or doing our best to do that.
I don't believe in like huge generational differences or putting people in boxes, but I do feel that the classes of associates that came after me, and especially the ones now, are better about that. They're better about being true to themselves than I was 20 years ago.
Oh, definitely. And I think there's someone, he's at NYU, he's at Stern, I'm blanking on his name, but I'll find it. And he's written about generational differences. And Gen Z this is me. And I'm taking a sick day. And I think there's a lot we have to learn from each other, whatever generation.
I remember being in the law firm and like, I would be wearing just like, picture your plain black pantsuit with the generic top underneath, But I was like the crazy one because I had long earrings on. And I was like, this was our standard?
I worked with a woman a long time ago now. She was in my pilot group. And she used to dress in like cheerful colors and bright blazers. And she got shut down for that. They were like, oh, you're too colorful. She was like, this is not the place for me.
So I'm glad that has changed a lot. And with that, it's easier for you to find your people, right?
For sure. So Stephanie, anything else about legal tech or the work that you're doing now that you would like to share about?
It's a fascinating time. A lot of people don't necessarily even know what legal tech is, and it's certainly not a monolith, but basically any way technology is touching the practice of law, but there's so much going on, and it's legitimately so exciting, especially with AI, and which still some people love it, hate it, but it's whether or not you do, it's here to stay, so it's time to start learning about it. It really is just changing things in a profession that had a reputation for so long of being resistant to change and innovation. It's such an exciting time, and the things these tools can do and the way they can change. I'm looking more for the tip to happen where it gives people more of their work-life balance back, but I think it has huge potential there. It also has huge potential for increasing access to justice, which is something I really care about. I know AI is touching every industry out there, but if you're at all interested in legal, it's worth looking into because it's a game changer for how things get done and how people can, what work they can handle, how they can handle it. It's a fascinating time.
I love all that. And I think I made a face when you were like, give people their work-life balance back. And not because I wouldn't, of course, love that. Most firms still go on the billable hour business model. And if people are not collecting 6-minute bags of money, then how do you see that impacting AI and legal tech impacting the billable hour model?
That's still one of the biggest debates out there. It's been every technological advancement that has come along has been rumored to be the death of the billable hour, and it certainly never was going to. And I'm one of those people that thinks the billable hour will never fully die, but this is having bigger impacts on it than anything else has. There's so much ingrained in the billable hour in terms of it's not just you're billing the client, but like you said, how do you compensate your associate? You're expecting that person to bill how many hours, and even if you're not billing the client that way. So it's so much more ingrained that it's going to take a lot more to dismantle it, but we are seeing movement on it. And we are seeing, I do think we're going to see kinds of work, not the high level strategy work, that's different, but the lower level, the more routine work that will give way to more fixed fees and things like that. And smaller law firms, they have more of a luxury to maybe bill on those alternative fee arrangements. They always have. And this can really superpower them to take on work that maybe they couldn't take on before and offer those alternative billing arrangements. So I don't know. I tend to be a little bit more of a pessimist on the billable hour point than other people. But maybe that's still some of my inherent.
Because scars from growing up in the system. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And then I spoke with someone yesterday who he's starting a business called Reframe, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Ben, I can't remember, his last name starts with a C. But he's doing a thing to train lawyers to use AI and to learn to figure out their skills that they can leverage into different ways to continue to practice law, but really using AI tools.
Yeah, there's a lot of training initiatives right now that I'm super interested in. I would love to see more of them too. And lawyers need exactly that. They need to be comfortable using these tools. They need to figure out how they can incorporate it into their work, because what a first-year associate does now is not what I did as a first-year associate, because some of that work truly can be done by AI. But then the successful first-year associates need to be using it as a regular tool. And there has been a bit of a gap in the expecting people to know how to use it, but not teaching them to use it. So there are some really cool training initiatives. There's companies too like Alta Claro and Hotshot that are really focused on this kind of training. And I love to see it because, like I said in the beginning, be curious and educate yourself. But if your employer offers any kind of training whatsoever, take advantage of it.
Good point. Okay, good. How can people find you and learn more about your work and follow Legal Tech Hub?
Yes. So I am Stephanie Wilkins. You can find me on LinkedIn under Stephanie Wilkins. Legal Tech Hub, our website is legaltechnologyhub.com. You can find us there. And then if you want to email me, I am just Stephanie@legaltechnologyhub.com. We post a lot of our stuff on LinkedIn. We have free newsletters you can sign up for if you want. If you want to educate yourself and get articles in your inbox and see what's going on in the industry, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It might take me a few days to respond because I try to not get swamped with my LinkedIn inbox, but I'm on there. I'd love to chat if you're interested in becoming a writer, becoming a legal technologist. just quitting your career.
All right. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and your experience. I really do believe legal tech, just whether you use it in your practice as an attorney or you want to look at it as a field to leverage your experience into, there's huge opportunities there for so many lawyers. So thank you for being a resource and sharing all this with us today.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm an open book, so feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Will Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and share it with another woman lawyer in your life. If you are curious to explore your next steps, you're invited to book a private confidential consultation. And here's a special link we've set up just for podcast listeners. Go to consultation.womeninterestedinleavinglaw.com. Again, that is consultation.womeninterestedinleavinglaw, all one word.com, to schedule your confidential consultation today. Where there's a will, there's a way. Let's get you on your next step way today.